Have you ever sat in a meeting where everybody sounds intelligent, everybody contributes ideas, everybody asks thoughtful questions, and somehow absolutely nothing moves forward? You leave the meeting with more notes, more uncertainty, another meeting scheduled, and a strange feeling that the team is working hard while progress quietly dies in the background. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most teams are not slow because they lack talent. They are slow because they lack decision alignment. And when organizations don't know how decisions should be made, they compensate by thinking about everything. They actually end up overthinking everything. More analysis, more conversations, more approvals, more caution, more meetings disguised as productivity. It's what I call execution paralysis, hidden behind collaboration. And the dangerous part, more leaders don't even realize it is happening. It looks responsible. It sounds strategic. It feels professional. But underneath the surface, the organization is cognitively fragmented. Think about the Avengers before Nick Fury aligned them. You had intelligence, power, capability, expertise, but no aligned operating logic. So what happened? Conflict. There was delay, ego, collisions, chaos. Not because the Avengers were weak, because alignment came after talent. That's exactly what happens inside organizations every single day. Today I'm going to show you the hidden psychological reason teams overthink, why smart organizations become slow organizations, and how aligned companies make faster, better decisions without creating burnout. And so once you see this pattern, you'll never look at meetings the same way again. Let's clear something up immediately. Overthinking is usually not the real problem. Overthinking is a symptom. The real issue is decision uncertainty inside the organizational system. Here is what happens in most teams. Someone raises an idea, a wonderful idea. Immediately, the room starts asking, what if this fails? Who approves this? What will leadership think? Do we have enough data? Should we wait? Maybe we should analyze this further. And suddenly, a 2-day decision becomes a 2-month conversation. Now, notice something important. The team is not necessarily being irrational. They're trying to reduce risk. And because the organization lacks shared decision architecture, every decision feels dangerous. So people compensate with excess thinking. This is critical. Teams overthink when the cost of being wrong feels unclear. Let me say that again. Teams overthink when the cost of being wrong feels unclear. And most leaders accidentally create this environment, not intentionally, but structurally, because many organizations have unclear priorities, undefined authority, inconsistent accountability, conflicting leadership signals, and shifting expectations. So employees become mentally defensive. They start optimizing for safety, perception, politics, and approval instead of execution. And this creates what I call cognitive drag. The organizations burn mental energy trying to interpret the environment rather than act within it. Imagine driving through heavy fog. You don't stop driving because you forgot how to drive. You slow down because visibility disappeared. That's exactly what happens inside organizations. People don't slow down because they are incompetent. They slow down because organizational clarity disappeared. Now, here is where this gets really interesting. The smarter the team, the more vulnerable they can become to overthinking. Why? Why? And this is a smart team. Because intelligent people can generate infinite possibilities. They can see risks, they can see variables, they can see perceptions, they can see unintended consequences, they can see market implications, they can see operational dependencies. And without alignment, intelligence becomes amplification. Suddenly, every decision feels massively complex. That is why highly talented organizations sometimes move slower than average organizations. Because intelligence without alignment creates friction. You see this everywhere. A startup with average talent sometimes out executes a corporate giant filled with experts. Why? Because a startup has simpler decision paths, clearer priorities, fewer approval layers, and stronger execution alignment. Meanwhile, the larger organization becomes trapped in what I call collaborative over processing. Everybody contributes, but nobody decides. Everybody discusses, but nobody owns. Everybody analyzes, but nobody executes. It reminds me of that scene in Pirates of the Caribbean, where everyone keeps debating the rules while Jack Sparrow just acts. Sometimes organizations become so obsessed with perfect thinking that they lose momentum entirely. And momentum matters more than leaders realize because momentum creates confidence, creates learning, adaptability, and organizational energy. Overthinking destroys all four. Now, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. There is another hidden reason teams overthink. And honestly, this is the part many organizations avoid confronting. Overthinking is often a protection mechanism. People overanalyze when psychological consequences feel unpredictable. For example, will I get blamed if this fails? Will leadership support this decision later? Will another department attack this choice? Will priorities suddenly change next week? Will I look incompetent if I move too fast? When organizations punish imperfect execution more than delayed execution, people naturally become cautious. And here is the irony. Leaders often say, we need people to take ownership. But the organizational environment silently teaches ownership is dangerous. So employees retreat into analysis because analysis feels safer than action. Think about many school systems. Students are rewarded for avoiding mistakes more than experimenting creatively. Then organizations hire these same people and suddenly expect bold execution. That transition rarely happens automatically. The organizational system must intentionally create decision safety. Now, let me clarify something. Decision safety does not mean lowering standards. It means creating clarity around authority, acceptable risk, escalation thresholds, and learning expectations. Because when people understand what matters, who decides, and how risk is evaluated, their cognitive load drops dramatically, and lower cognitive load produces faster execution. This is one of the biggest principles inside my organizational alignment cognitive model. Execution speed increases when cognitive friction decreases. Most organizations try to solve execution problems operationally, but many execution problems are actually cognitive problems. Now, let's talk solutions. What do highly aligned organizations do differently? What do they do differently? One, they standardize decision logic. Not every decision needs a committee. No. Aligned organizations define what requires collaboration, what requires leadership, and what individuals can decide independently. That alone removes massive friction. Second, they clarify priorities relentlessly. More teams overthink because priorities compete against each other. For example, you get this instruction: move fast, but avoid all mistakes. Be innovative, but don't disrupt operations. Take ownership, but get approval fast. Conflicting priorities create organizational hesitation. Aligned leaders simply simplify decision filters. People know what matters most, what trade-offs are acceptable, and how success is evaluated. Third, they reduce approval dependency. This is huge. This is huge. Many organizations unknowingly train employees to become permission seekers. Every action requires validation. Every decision climbs multiple layers, and eventually the organization becomes cognitively centralized. Everything slows down. Highly aligned organizations distribute decision confidence, not recklessly, strategically, because scalable execution requires distributed clarity. Fourth, they normalize imperfect progress. This is critical. Some organizations unconsciously worship perfection, but perfectionism is often just fear wearing professional clothes. Aligned teams understand something powerful. Fast learning beats slow certainty, because in dynamic environments, delayed perfection often loses to adaptive execution. Amazon talks about this constantly. Bias for action, not reckless action. Aligned action. There's a difference. This is exactly why I developed the organizational cognitive alignment model, because most organizations focus only on strategy, focus only on structure or productivity tools, while ignoring the cognitive environment that people operate inside. But organizations don't execute through systems alone. They don't. They execute through human interpretation. Yes, they execute through human interpretation. And when interpretation becomes fragmented, meetings multiply, hesitation increases, accountability weakens, and execution slows down. Organizational cognitive alignment focuses on reducing that fragmentation. It aligns decision making, priorities, authority, accountability, and execution logic. Because when people think from the same operational framework, execution accelerates naturally. not through pressure, not through micromanagement, not through motivational speeches, through clarity and honesty. That is why many organizations burn out leaders. Leaders become the human bridge between disconnected teams. Every unresolved decision escalates upward. Every conflict requires intervention. Every ambiguity lands on leadership. And eventually, leaders become organizational bottlenecks. They become organizational bottlenecks, not because they are weak, because the system depends on them too heavily. Alignment removes that burden. So, here is the big takeaway. Teams don't overthink because they care too much. They overthink because the organizational system creates uncertainty. And uncertainty increases cognitive friction. That friction slows decisions. Slower decisions weaken momentum. Weak momentum reduces confidence. And eventually, the organization mistakes hesitation for professionalism. But the highest performing organizations understand something most teams miss. Speed is not created by pressure. Speed is created by alignment. When people know what matters, who decides, how risk is evaluated, and where accountability lives, execution becomes dramatically easier. And suddenly, meetings shrink, decisions accelerate, ownership improves, and leaders stop carrying the entire organization mentally. That's the power of organizational cognitive alignment. Now, I would love to hear from you. What is the biggest reason your team overthinks decisions? Put in the comments below. And if this video helped you rethink how execution actually works inside organizations, subscribe to the channel. Because every week we break down 1. Organizational alignment, 2. Decision making, 3. Execution psychology, 4. Leadership quality, 5. The hidden patterns that cause teams to stall. Until next time, remember this. Smart organizations are not the ones that think the longest. They are the ones that align the fastest.